are now listening to the Paul McGUIRE Report. This is Paul McGUIRE. On today's program, we're going to open up for you the little tiny box that many of you who know people, they actually live in, they exist in, their consciousness resides in, their intellect resides in, a relatively small box, like maybe the size of half a modest hotel room. And so their entire reality is lived out in a small box. And so they think inside of the box. Everything they do is inside of this box. Now, this isn't healthy for people. Psychologists have already determined that when you socially isolate people, when someone is forced to undergo social isolation is one methodology after another of social engineering, scientific mind control, behavioral conditioning sciences, where that if you subject an individual or a family or a group of people, if you subject them to the following rituals, habits, programs, etc., then you can shape and mold from the external into the internal. You can control their thoughts, their beliefs, their opinions, whether they believe in God, whether they don't believe in God. You can control their entire life by putting them not in so much a physical prison, but putting them in a psychological prison. And in a psychological prison, as Aldous Huxley, the author of Brave New World, once said, that the scientific elite, the scientific mind control scientists, they can program you to live and exist inside of a tiny little box. And then after doing this habitually, which incorporates the scientific mind control principle of repetition, when you repeat the experience or the verbiage or the symbols or whatever it is you're trying to drum into somebody, when you do this through what psychologists would call repetition, and then you combine repetition with social isolation, you're controlling the formation of individuals internally. You're firing up and tweaking their biological chemicals that create their personality, their moods, their IQ, and everything else. So, when they gave the order for social isolation, the primary purpose for the order of social isolation was not to just isolate people. They knew from experiments in many different communist nations, they knew that social isolation was a highly effective method of breaking somebody's free will through things like repetition, through things like thinking only inside the box. When they want to really work over the mind of a prisoner in prison, what they will often do is send that prisoner into extended periods of time in a solitary confinement isolation cell where there's no lights, nobody to talk to. There's a very minimum of stimulus. So your senses are not being stimulated. Taste, touch, auditory, seeing people, lights, all of these affect stimuli. Stimuli keeps your brain healthy and growing and nourishing itself. When you're in solitary confinement, what can often happen is that people will spontaneously begin to hallucinate from within a solitary confinement chamber. Why? Because they're deprived of all stimuli. And when you're deprived of all stimuli, your mind of its own accord begins to hallucinate, see visions and dreams, and go into weird places, because when you deliberately shut down certain aspects of your mind, the other aspects of your mind, especially perception, work overtime to compensate for it. All right, you're listening to the Paul McGUIRE Report. I'm Paul McGUIRE. Visit paulmcguire.us. That's paulmcguire.us. And we will be back in just a moment. Wherever you are on planet Earth, wherever you are in the United States of America, the Paul McGUIRE Report brings you and communicates with you truth. Truth not only technologically, scientifically, in terms of physics, quantum physics, truth in terms of history, psychology, neuropsychiatry, and the Word of God, which is a supernatural book, and as well the study of the personal living God of the universe, who does exist. And the personal living God of the universe is the infinite personal living God of the universe. The personal living God of the universe is the creator God, capital C. Now, we live in a time period where there's a rapid acceleration in the methodologies of total dictatorship, total control, total tyranny, digital dictatorship like never before. And we're doing everything we can on this program, the Paul McGUIRE Report, Paradise Mountain Church, and other outlets that we have that are designed to communicate and educate people all across America and all across the world. So I'm reading from an article in Global Research entitled "The New Mind Control: Subliminal Stimulation Controlling People with Their Knowledge." And then the author, Robert Epstein, has nothing to do with the notorious Epstein, two different people. The internet, as a mass communications technology, has given birth to subtle forms of influence that can flip elections and manipulate everything we say, think, and do. So the reality that we're looking at is a holographic reality. It's an illusory reality. We stay in the little box that we chose to stay in. So all our perceptions are confined to the little box. And then we allow our minds to be taken over, to be occupied by classical psychological psyops mechanisms. And we allow a digital dictatorship to rule over us and control everything we do, we think, we feel, and so on and so forth. And so the newest forms of mind control are now called subliminal stimulation, controlling people without their knowledge. So people don't even know what you're doing to them, but you can get inside their head. They will not have a clue that you've gotten inside their head, and you can change their political beliefs, their spiritual beliefs, their sexual beliefs, their social beliefs. You can control every belief, behavior, and action that they have. And they will not even have the most minimal awareness of what is going on beneath the surface. And that's why we exist, Paul McGUIRE Ministries and Paradise Mountain Church, because we live in a day where there is a vacuum. There is a glaring vacuum of truth missing from communications, missing from social media, missing from podcasters. You listen to most of the podcasters. I'm glad they're doing what they're doing for the most part. But when you listen to most of the podcasters, they're woefully uneducated. They don't really know what's going on. And they're like grasping for straws. They don't know what the end game is here. And you better know what the end game is planned for you, or you're in for one rude awakening. So, over the past 100 years or more, some of the greatest authors and writers in the world, recognized by vast numbers of people, they have expressed their mutual concern about humanity's future. In the Iron Heel, 1908, the American writer Jack London pictured a world in which a handful of wealthy corporate titans, the oligarchs, kept the masses at bay with a brutal combination of rewards and punishments. Much of humanity lived in virtual slavery, while the fortunate ones were bought off with decent wages that allowed them to live comfortably, but without any real control over their lives. So Jack London wrote those famous books. I forgot the name of the book that took place up in Alaska, with, those dogs that pull the sleds over the ice. And he wrote a famous novel about one of these dogs that would pull these giant ice cart type things. And the name of the famous novel is slipping my mind. But he was a brilliant intellectual, very perceptive, a man with faults, no question about that. And he talked about how an elite group, and this was back in 1908, an elite group could control the world, and how an elite group could control the masses. So in 1924, another author wrote a book called We in 1924, written by the brilliant Russian writer Yevgeny Zamatin, anticipating the excesses of the emerging Soviet Union, envisioned a world in which the people were kept in check through persuasive monitoring. Sounds like today, except we just replaced persuasive monitoring with surveillance electronic technology. But it's the same game. It's being played out right in front of your eyes. So the walls of their homes were made of clear glass, so everything they did could be observed. Well, the walls of your home and my home are made of clear glass because we are under electronic surveillance observation 24/7. So the people in the emerging Soviet Union were kept in check through pervasive monitoring. The walls of their homes were made of clear glass, so everything they did could be observed. They were allowed to lower their shades an hour a day to have sex, but both the rendezvous time and the lover had to be registered first with the state. In Brave New World, written in 1932, the British author Aldous Huxley pictured a near-perfect society in which unhappiness and aggression had been engineered out of humanity through a combination of genetic engineering and psychological conditioning. In the much darker novel, 1984, and then I think it was written, the darker novel was entitled 1984. And it was written in 1949 by Aldous Huxley's fellow author, George Orwell, who described a society in which thought itself was controlled. Orwell's world, children were taught to use a simplified form of English called newspeak, sounds like woke, in order to assure that they could never express ideas that were dangerous to society. That's exactly where we are in America right now. These are all fictional tales, to be sure. Well, I'm not so sure about that. And in each, the leaders who held power used conspicuous forms of control that at least a few people actively resisted and occasionally overcame. But in the non-fiction bestseller, The Hidden Persuaders, recently released in a 50th anniversary edition, the American journalist Vance Packard described a stranger and rather exotic type of influence that was rapidly emerging in the United States, and that was in a way more threatening than any fictional types of control pictured in the novels. According to Packard, U.S. corporate executives and politicians were beginning to use subtle and, in many cases, completely undetectable methods to change people's emotions, thinking, and behavior based on insights from psychiatry and the social sciences. Now, these advertising psychology methodologies that Packard talked about, they were things like subliminal stimulation, or what Packard called sub-threshold effects. The presentation of short messages that tell us what to do, but that are flashed so briefly we aren't aware we have seen them. In 1958, propelled by public concern about theater in New Jersey that had supposedly hidden the messages in a movie, increased ice cream sales. So both on television and people going to a movie were subjected to very nanosecond, half a second, quarter of a second images of delicious looking ice cream were flashed before the eyes subliminally, before the eyes of all the people who went to the movie theater. And then, a certain amount of time went by, and these people who had been exposed to that subliminal imagery of delicious ice cream, they all huddled at break time to the ice cream counter in the movie theater. And they weren't just spontaneously buying ice cream. The thought of buying ice cream was very subtly seeded in their subconscious mind. And completely undetectable methods to change people's thinking, emotions, and behavior based on these sciences. Now, you can sell booze, you can sell soda, you name it, you can sell all kinds of things. In Huxley's government that he depicted in Brave New World, it was guided by social science marketers who were quickly learning how to play upon people's insecurities, frailties, unconscious fears, aggressive feelings, and sexual desires to alter their thinking, emotions, and behavior without any awareness they were being manipulated. I can tell you right now, as a researcher and an author and a speaker on this kind of topic, I continually meet or encounter people who have been very heavily subliminally programmed into believing all kinds of things, into wanting all kinds of things. And in a sense, they don't realize it, but they have become like prison camp prisoners. They have been subjected to, without their realizing it, scientific mind control. And when you add to that repetition and other methodologies of scientific mind control, you can control a person's personality and all kinds of things. So, for example, Google decides which of the billions of web pages it is going to include in our search results. And it also decides how to rank them. How it decides these things is a deep, dark secret, one of the best kept secrets in the world, like the formula for Coca-Cola. Now, this is very important. This is vitally important. Google, Facebook, all these other social media engines have the capacity of directing hundreds of millions and billions of people to search particular words. And when they search particular words, they're automatically led to certain specific, politically correct explanations. And it's a subtle pyramid scheme. But what it's really all about is you think you're freely making the choices on the internet. You think that you have a free will. The fact of the matter is you don't have a free will at all. You are being directed to, you are being told to, you are being programmed subliminally where to look, how to look, which author to, what author's name. So you see, people, this is very important to understand. We deal with this every day of the week on the Paul McGUIRE Report. People don't understand it, but they are being programmed to seek out particular authors will receive more favorable treatment if their belief systems are globalist and politically correct. If you are speaking out against things that are evil and harmful, but they are politically correct, you're going to find yourself brutally scrubbed from the internet. There's a war going on right now. It's a war of ideas and consequences. And ultimately, you and I and our children and grandchildren, ultimately, we are in a war for the hearts and souls of mankind on a level we never, ever expected to find ourselves in. And this war is for control of planet Earth. And we're fighting it right now. We're in the prelude up to the great war of planet Earth. And you need to either fess up that you have been a coward and a phony. Not all of you. Many of you have done the right thing. I'm not trying to make a blank statement. What I am saying is we all need to do an inventory check. We all need to examine our hearts to make sure that we're really fighting for truth and that we're walking in the truth. This is a critical thing, and we have to be in the game and not, sitting by the grandstand somewhere. We got to be in the game. We got to be playing hard, and we got to know how to win. And we don't give up just because, we met adversity or somebody called us a name. Who cares? Can I be really honest with you? Who cares if somebody calls you a name? I outgrew that in grammar school. I don't care if somebody calls me a name. Okay, so Google, you see, Paul McGUIRE Ministries and anybody else that is an authentic, truth-speaking ministry, that is speaking the truth intelligently and in love, any minister or ministry that is speaking the truth in love is being waged war against companies like Google and other social media companies. They are fighting against our ideas. They are fighting against the truth. They are fighting against nationalism and Christianity. They're fighting and waging war against all these good things. And the way they implement this war, they're telling you in this research article, you need to educate people about this reality. Most people don't even know it's going on unless you're fighting in the war. Now, listen carefully. Google decides every day. Google decides which of the billions of web pages it's going to include in our search results. So they can make or break one prophecy author over another one. They can make or break an environmentalist versus a creationist. They can control the minds of millions and millions of people. So Google is using secret formulas that direct billions of people to web pages it's going to include in their search results. And so you think you're prompting yourself. No, you're being subtly led and guided by a robot, Google. Google is guiding you, and it's telling you how to think, how to act, what to act. And this formula, this algorithm formula on who to promote and who not to promote with the internet is one of the greatest business secrets in the world. And Google actually decides how it's going to rank people. And obviously, the bigger rank a Google or a Facebook or whoever gives you, the bigger the rank they give you, the greater your results, the greater your cash inflow, the greater your monetary income, the greater your donations, the greater your advertising dollars. You see, it's one giant rigged mechanism. But Google has a secret formula using artificial intelligence about how it decides these things, and they keep it a deep, dark secret. One of the best kept secrets in the world, just like the formula for Coca-Cola. Now, this researcher said because people are far more likely to read and click on the higher ranked items, so if you want to sell out and you just speak politically correct stuff, you will find yourself sailing to the top of the higher ranked items that are clicked and read. In other words, you can artificially manipulate your ranking. And the higher you make your ranking go, the more influence, the more power, the more fame, and the more you can win the battlefield of the mind. Now, this is what I talk about. When I talk to you, when I come talk to you on a regular basis, how I need you to ask God what he would have you give financially or in terms of a donation or a contribution, that you should simply obey God, and you should, and give whatever it is he's telling you to give. And this is an important fundamental of the faith, because this is how we fight the spiritual warfare. Now, what you have to understand is, when I tell you this, I'm not telling you this to tell you this. I'm telling you this as part of an ongoing effort in educating our listeners and educating people all over the internet to the reality that we're fighting a totally rigged game, just like politics. And how high you are in rankings, how many people you have following you, watching you, listening to you, all of that stuff does not spill out as clean data. None of that is produced as the result of honest, hard work. It is all produced by manipulation, algorithms, bots, computers, and secret computerized formulas. That's the war we're involved in. But the average person doesn't know that. That's why it's vital. And I can't tell you how vital it is. If you say you agree with what we're standing for at Paul McGUIRE Ministries, and then I ask you to ask the Lord how much you should give financially or contribute or donate, and then I encourage you to give whatever it is God tells you to give and obey God. The reason I'm doing that is I'm ever present and constantly aware of the fact that we're fighting the greatest war for the hearts and souls of mankind in the history of the world. And the enemy is using all the hidden data. The enemy is using all the hidden algorithms. The enemy is using all the hidden rigging systems that artificially and synthetically bring certain speakers, writers, ministers, and communicators down. And then magically and mysteriously, it puffs up all the writers, thinkers, Christian ministers, etc., the ones that they secretly want to promote. It will secretly promote all those people. And that's how you conquer the minds and hearts of people in America. So I need you, when I say to you, I need you to go to the social media page that you're listening to this program on or that you're watching this program on. Go to that social media page and make sure that you electronically choose to follow the Paul McGUIRE Report and our other social media, that you're a follower, a listener, and you electronically sign in. This way, it compensates for the fact that they've been playing dirty with us. They've been stealing from us, and they know they've been stealing from us. And not just me, anybody who's a truth teller and needs to produce numbers in order to gain access to larger groups of people. Anyone who is a truth teller finds out very quickly that this is like almost a criminal game you're involved in. You're not committing a crime. No, we're not committing a crime. But the people who masquerade as truth tellers, the people who masquerade as fact checkers, and all the other algorithm manipulating technologies, they are artificially manipulating the internet and either raising you up as an individual or actively suppressing you, marginalizing you, and bringing you down. It's not neutral. You're in a war in which the PSYOPs, psychological operations component of this war is staggering. It's absolutely staggering. So, when I tell you to do this on the Paul McGUIRE Report, I will tell you quite bluntly, this is a life and death matter. Oh, I will continue because I have no intention of giving up. But to the degree, how many people can I reach? Will I reach? That's all based on how willing you are, if you believe in what we're doing, to stand with me. I don't claim to be perfect. I've told you that before. I'm just one ordinary guy like you. Don't think of me any bit differently than you would think about anybody else. I'm just an ordinary guy that God called to take a stand in this area of truth and shining the light. I'm just one ordinary guy who's obeying the Lord. But I can't do it effectively unless you back me up and unless you listen, follow, and join with electronically the Paul McGUIRE Report on the various and different social media platforms that we're on, like Brighteon, like Rumble, like Getter, like so many others we have at our master webpage, paulmcguire.us. That's paulmcguire.us. Okay, so this author and researcher back in 2012 began, and you know, all the truth tellers go through this battle that I'm sharing with you privately. They go through this. I've talked to them privately. They're going through what I'm going through. They're fighting the same battle. So in late 2012, the author of this research article, Robert Epstein, he said, in late 2012, I began to wonder whether highly ranked search results could be impacting more than consumer choices. You hear what he's saying? Listen very, very carefully to what he's saying. You're not going to hear about this in the alternative media. You're not going to hear about this in the media. And you're not going to hear about this by the three corporations that run the world. They don't want you to know what I'm communicating to you. I'm communicating to you facts, but they don't want you to know, because the only way that they can win at this game is through stealing your numbers, dishonesty, and the manipulation of your numbers. So let me read it again and listen very carefully. When you learn this, when you master this, you'll know what I'm talking about and how vital a role you play in this communications war. So in 2012, this author began to wonder whether highly ranked search results could be impacting more than consumer choices. Perhaps, I speculated, a top search result could have a small impact on people's opinions about things. Early in 2013, with my associate Ronald E. Robertson of the American Institute of Behavioral Research and Technology in Vista, California, I put this idea to a test by conducting an experiment in which 102 people from San Diego were randomly assigned to one of three groups. In one group, people saw search results that favored one political candidate, that is, that linked to web pages that made this candidate look better than his or her opponent. In a second group, people saw search rankings that favored the opposing candidate. And in the third group, the control group, people saw a mix of rankings that favored neither candidate. The same search results and web pages were used in each group. The only thing that differed for the three groups was the ordering of the search results. To make our experiment realistic, we used real search results that linked to real web pages. We also used a real election, the 2010 election for the Prime Minister of Australia. We had a foreign election to make sure that our participants were undecided. So he continues on. And so what he discovered, what their research discovered, was on any internet page, how up the story is, how good a picture or big of a picture do they put up about you. Things that, look, this is not about vanity. If you think this is about vanity, you're missing the whole point. This is about highly manipulative, sophisticated techniques that are being employed by people in the psyops business, where they could actually artificially increase favor among the search engine's top-ranked candidate, increased by 50%. It increased by 50% by where you position the article on a page. How big a title does it have? How good of a picture photographically are they putting up? Do you look good? They do this? They've done this with me. They have a computer algorithm that will select. You'll have like 20 pictures of yourself on Google. I have thousands of pictures of myself on Google Pages, and it's amazing. It'll go through thousands of pictures of me, and it will, by artificial intelligence, deliberately select the pictures of me where I look like an idiot. And they're doing that on purpose. The goal is to marginalize me because I'm a threat to them. I'm a very effective communicator. I educate a lot of people. I change a lot of people's minds. And I have in the past changed many millions of people's minds. They don't like that, so they take you down, and they have a whole list of things they can do to take you down. And they don't play fair. And when the day is done, if you want to give an ethical judgment to what they're doing to you, number one is it's probably dishonest. Number two, it's rigging, which is stealing. They're stealing your potential donation dollars. They're stealing your advertising dollars, because they're artificially giving you a false ranking. And when they give you a false ranking of listeners and viewers, etc., they're artificially lowering your ranking. And when that happens, your income is artificially lowered. Your where you are in the rankings is artificially lowered, and they are rigging your results in the negative and marginalizing you. This affects book sales, access to larger markets to influence, access to more people to lead to Jesus Christ. You know what? My ability to reach souls for Jesus, my ability to reach larger numbers for Jesus is directly connected with the internet social media rankings they give me. How many watchers does Paul McGUIRE have? How many viewers does Paul McGUIRE have? All of these rankings open doors for me to lead people to Jesus Christ and to give them a biblical worldview and make the changes we both want to see in our nation. So that's what this is all about. So again, I'm going to circle around and just say this one more time. It is critical, absolutely critical, when I come to you and say, if you believe what we're doing at Paul McGUIRE Ministries, then I need you to go right now to the social media page you're listening or watching me on and electronically sign up as a follower, a listener, or a viewer of the Paul McGUIRE Show. And that way, it won't be just their manipulated, degraded, marginalized numbers that are being posted. They will be forced to post the accurate numbers. They'll be forced to post the accurate numbers because you are bypassing their rigging machines by going directly to the various social media pages that you use. And when you electronically follow me, it registers in their computer systems. Now, you see, the reason I know all this, and I know it about other truth speakers, is because I know what our real numbers are, somewhat. Because I have private e-blast lists. We have different lists where we can compare for ourselves first-hand numbers in the amount of followers and listeners and watchers. We have first-hand data ourselves. We don't have to rely on their data. And what happened was I was speaking at conferences, book sales were going through the roof, and all of a sudden I began to run into people I know, and I would hear some comments that, well, it's too bad you can't get more people to listen to you or to watch you on the internet. And I heard that more than once, and I said, this is odd. I've never heard anybody say this to me before, ever. And then I realized that they were getting their perception on me, and they were getting their perception on how many people we reached on a regular basis, how many followers, how many listeners do we have, that they were getting their data. And like most people, they didn't question it because they're not in the business of what I'm doing. So they didn't know that our numbers in actuality were substantially higher in terms of numbers of viewers, numbers of listeners, numbers of watchers, that we were soaring all over the world. And they weren't even counting up all our different social media outlets. So I said, I cannot allow these evil people who are waging war against America on behalf of the globalists, I can't allow them to rig my numbers and falsify and absolutely falsify how many people are listening to me, watching me, et cetera, et cetera. I cannot allow it. So I have now determined that I have to run my own counter PSYOPs campaign to the PSYOPs campaign they're attempting to rig me with. So I'm asking for your help. I simply ask that you ask the Lord how much you should give financially to this ministry, Paradise Mountain Church Ministries, and then simply whatever God tells you to do, radically obey Him, and together we'll take back the land. It's just that simple. Whatever the Lord tells you to do, obey Him. That's what I do. That's how I built this ministry. I never built this ministry on purely pragmatics. It's not that I don't believe in pragmatics. I definitely do. But ultimately, this ministry is built on my faith in God, you as prayer warriors and financial contributors to the ministry. And this ministry is built on being faithful to God and communicating the truth of God's word, leading people to Christ, whether it's fashionable or not. I don't make bottom line decisions based on political correctness and is it fashionable or not. I just don't do that. Okay, this is Paul McGUIRE. I want you to go to paulmcguire.us. That's paulmcguire.us. And I want you to go to the page you're listening to me on now, whether it's audio or whether it's video or whatever it is, and sign up electronically as a watcher or a follower of the Paul McGUIRE program and watch what happens. Already our numbers we're starting to soar in all these different categories. Now, I'm not going to name names. I was for a while. but I've had some letters from some top people at some of the top alternative networks, and they have a history of my visits and likes and watchers that goes back before their social media thing even started. And they know that I built a platform of millions and millions and millions of viewers, of watchers and readers. But they also know, they agreed. I was surprised they agreed when they responded to me. They agreed that your numbers don't seem to correspond with the actual reality of how many people are actually watching and listening and reading all the content that Paul McGUIRE report puts out. All right, this is Paul McGUIRE. We'll be back in just a second. Visit paulmcguire.us. You are listening to the Paul McGUIRE Report. This is Paul McGUIRE. Once again, practically, I want to ask you to stand with me in this fight for truth, freedom, and the fight for the right to reach people for Jesus Christ, because that is an integral part of everything that we do. It's not just an add-on. It's front and center. So I'm asking you to stand with us. And in practical terms, I need your help. This is a critical moment in the greatest battle for the hearts and minds of mankind in the history of the world, which was a book I wrote. This is a critical juncture. Do not think that it's easy street from now on. The battle has just begun. If you think that, well, gee, my guy got elected, now I can go back to sleep. That's not how it plays out. You're going to have to fight and spiritually, intelligently, law-abidingly, and peacefully. But you will have to fight, because if you don't fight, you're going to go into hardcore slavery. And I'm not using just inflammatory words. I'm going to give you a synopsis of what the end game is for the Great Reset people, what their end game is, what kind of technocratic totalitarian state they envision that you and I should be slaves in. Because that's when you get through all the smoke and mirrors, you discover that their end game is to enslave the human race, to make us slaves under their dictatorship, and it's a global dictatorship. Okay, so let's look at some of the other research. And remember, these people lie. They're very much like the communists in the sense that they lie egregiously. They lie outrageously. And if you believe their lies, they're going to take you down hard and cold. So the name of the article is, it's from Dr. Joseph Mercola. Many of you know him, the nutritional doctor and expert, a very brave man. He wrote an article in Global Research entitled, "It's Now Crucial to Understand What We're Up Against. The COVID pandemic is a coup d'etat, a global takeover referred to as the Great Reset." So when you hear Paul McGUIRE talking, and I've been talking and writing books, 36 books, all over the world, reaching millions and millions of people, no exaggeration, and I have been communicating the reality that we are being threatened by a global takeover by a globalist elite. And the name of their global takeover is called the Great Reset. And the COVID pandemic was part of one coup d'etat. The COVID pandemic was part of a global takeover referred to as the Great Reset. Allow that to burn into your minds and absorb it. Knowledge is power. Okay, so what we're trying to do at Paul McGUIRE Report and Paradise Mountain Church, we're trying to educate people with the Word of God spiritually, but integrate that education with realities that are happening all around us. So it's absolutely crucial to understand what we're up against on a global level, and exactly who's responsible for the rising totalitarianism and their ultimate intention. Don't be naive. Don't be gullible. These people have a hidden game plan, a hidden agenda, and it's evil, and it's dark as hell. Okay. The COVID pandemic was a coup d'etat. That means a successful revolution carried out by the technocratic cabal that is behind the global takeover agenda referred to as the Great Reset. So they're running a conquest. They're running a criminal enterprise. Their end game is as brutal and bloody and monstrous as Adolf Hitler and Nazi Germany, as communist Russian Revolution, as communist Chinese Revolution. They have printed publicly and in speeches and video and on computer. They have openly discussed what their plans are, and they've said it right to our faces. Now, if we don't believe them, then we're fools. Okay. The Great Reset was introduced by the World Economic Forum, WEF, which is tightly coupled to the United Nations and the World Health Organization, WHO. Their agenda is to implement a global type of totalitarianism based on technocratic and transhumanist ideologies. Part of their plan also includes re-engineering and controlling all forms of life, including humans. While the outward expression of technocracy will appear as totalitarianism, the control center is not an individual, rather than a single person, ruling by decree. Technocracy relies on control through technology and algorithm. Algorithm is a computer program built by artificial intelligence that will automatically get you or drive you to the place that you want to be, but it will use artificial intelligence to efficiently have you arrive at your destiny, such as maybe your destiny is you want to conquer the world. Well, AI will bring that about for you through an algorithm and technology. This is a very important difference. In short, there will be no individual to blame or hold accountable. The dictator is an algorithm. Technocracy is an invented and unnatural form of economics and expresses itself as totalitarianism and requires social engineering to work past technocrats. In the past, defined technocracy as the science of social engineering. Controlling the populace is crucial for the system to function. So, I mean, it's heavy stuff, man. It's heavy. So, the COVID crisis was a planned crisis. The COVID crisis was designed to create a fertile platform for mind control, social engineering, things of that nature. And then eventually the goal of the vaccine passport will be replaced by a digital identity. Now, in effect, that's already happened because anybody who got the vaccine already has a microscopic, self-evolving, microscopic nanochip particle in their bloodstream, which is feeding off 5G, 6G energy, and it's growing kind of like the movie Invasion from Mars. I think that was the name of the movie. Okay. And the new normal is out the window. And you can spot these people, but you have to become educated. So by educated, I mean you can't be an airhead and expect to live a good life and expect to be victorious. Being an airhead and being victorious are two different end games. You choose your end game, airhead or victorious. So you got to know what's happening. Like, for example, who is really pulling the strings in the Great Reset? Another important question you got to ask, and these are the answers we're trying to get to people. Who's the real enemy? Who is it that wants to wipe us out? It's not the common population. They don't want to wipe us out. It's not a specific nation, like any given nation, Russia, America, or whatever. They're not the ultimate problem. What it really is about is that the globalist elite consists of the wealthiest and richest billionaire and trillionaire individuals and families on planet Earth that rule planet Earth. And they share a somewhat common globalist agenda and an occultist endgame. In fact, I would say a Luciferian endgame. And this goes back to the Trilateral Commission in the 1970s that Rockefeller started. It goes back to the people that were involved in this, like Henry Kissinger, Zbigniew Brzezinski. And I write the details and the stories of all these people and their names and what they did to get this dictatorship on the road. And it's in my books like A Prophecy of the Future of America, Volume 1, Prophecy of the Future of America, Volume 2, power from on high, the day the dollar died, Are You Ready? The Babylon Code, uh, The Greatest Battle for the Hearts and Minds of Mankind in the History of the World, and on and on. All of my books expose this entire humanist occultist revolution in detail. So the Great Reset and the movers and shakers, like from the Trilateral Commission, etc. In my book, The Greatest Battle for the Hearts and Minds of Mankind in the History of the World, I have 2 or 3 page quote from Rockefeller in the New York Times editorial, where he praises China for being the ideal futuristic state and says America has to be more like communist China. How evil is this man? I mean, really, how evil is he? Then we have the Agenda 21 that it helped lay the initial groundwork by the UN. And the Trilateral Commission began in the 1970s. And you can see, like, the head of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, and the Bill Gates of the world, and the thousands of companies that belong to the World Economic Forum. And these people, I'm not saying they're evil. I don't know if they are evil or not, but their actions are evil. Who is calling for the mass slaughter of billions of people through disguised methodologies? And then they have a secret plan to own and control all of life. And so this is all about, when push comes to shove, this is about micromanaging the human race under my thumb, but not my thumb, not your thumb, their evil thumb. Today, the technocrats are also moving in on the human genetic code. They want to hack into the software of life. And they talk about the human genetic code as just a non-personal, non-spiritual operating system. And if you can change that operating system by introducing a new line of code, or by changing the line of code, you can change how operating systems function. So this stuff goes back to theories on technocracy that go back to the 1930s and the 1920s. And it's interesting that some of the same super billionaires, super millionaires that were behind it, like William Randolph Hearst of the Hearst Publishing Empire, he promoted himself as a certified engineer and a graduate of Columbia University, but he never did graduate from Columbia University because he was heading the technocratic movement there. So these people are united. They're the wealthiest people in the world, and they are not compassionate. They see us as useless eaters, and we need to be able to move forward, not retreat. We need to be able to move forward and counter the invasion against every facet of our society. We need to counter every invasion coming against our society. And most Christian ministers, not all of them, there are many good ones, but not all of them, they're sound asleep. They're pretending that none of this stuff is happening. I happen to believe, and I think you share this belief with me, I happen to believe that I'm called to do this. I'm called to spread the gospel. I'm called to spread a biblical worldview. I'm called to blow the trumpet of warning over this invasion of planet Earth. And I just want to tell you personally that my conscience is in a state of grieving. I am under the heavy conviction of the Spirit of God, which is the Spirit of truth. I can't look at the coming atrocities and pretend that I don't see them. I can't do that. My conscience is being pressed upon by the living God of the Bible. The living God of the Bible is calling me supernaturally to take a stand and to fight the good fight of faith. And I can do nothing else but that. I can't pretend. Maybe some people can. I can't pretend it isn't happening. God won't allow me to do that. He won't allow me to play that game. So I need you to stand with me and stand with me. And if we will organize together and pray for one another and pray for me, those involved in this ministry, pray for one another and take a strong stand, we can press back and push back the forces of darkness. I still maintain to you that this is a winnable war. And so I ask you to join me in this winnable war. And ask the Lord what you can donate or contribute. Make sure you're a prayer warrior for me, this ministry, and everything we're involved in. And remember that God put you here for a reason on planet Earth. He put me here for a reason on planet Earth. And that wasn't to fall asleep. It was to stand for what is right and for what is truthful. And there are not too many Christians. There are some, but there are not too many who are willing to fight this good fight of faith. So if we will do this together, if each one of us will obey God together, then we can change the world. This is Paul McGUIRE, and I want to ask this final question. Where are all these events, current events, decisions, computer algorithms, bots, the Great Reset, digital totalitarianism? Where are all these individual catastrophic events taking us to? And there have been some very intelligent men writing about this. One is a gentleman I had the opportunity of getting to know years ago when I was producing feature films, and that is John Whitehead and Nisha Whitehead. And John founded the Rutherford Institute, which is a very credible, highly respected institute for freedoms, civil rights, both religious and in other areas. And he writes regular columns, well-written, brilliant columns. So in this article entitled, here's the title of the article he wrote: "You'd better watch out. The surveillance state is making a list and you're on it." And then he starts with that Christmas rhyme. He knows if you've been good. He knows if you've been sleeping. He knows if you've been bad. Santa Claus is coming to town. That was cynicism that he put in there. And then he starts in a more serious tone. "You'd better watch out. You'd better not pout. You'd better not cry, because I'm telling you why. This Christmas, it's surveillance state that's making a list and checking it twice. And it won't matter whether you've been good or bad." So this man is a very respected constitutional lawyer at the top of his game. And he's telling you that the surveillance state, he's warning you that the surveillance state is monitoring everybody, compiling electronic surveillance on everybody, compiling lists on everybody. And it doesn't matter whether you've been good or bad. And some of you need to wake up to this. You're making the false assumption that you're going to only be on a list if you're good or bad. No. You're on the list whether you are good or bad. Their thing is total surveillance state. Monitor everyone. Megadata. That's what megadata is. Monitor everything, everyone. So the surveillance state is making a list of everybody. Some of you and people you know are under the naive impression that, gee, I won't be on any list because I didn't, visit that Trump website or whatever. No, you're still going to be on the list, whether you're on the left, right, or middle, or whatever. You're being watched. And you better wake up to it, because this is how totalitarian regimes and dictatorships always start the same way. Okay. Mass surveillance is the deep state's version of a gift that keeps on giving back to the deep state. Geofencing dragnets, fusion centers. Fusion centers, I haven't really done that much research into them, but what I've read is very disturbing. Fusion centers are these law enforcement, intelligence agency, a kind of a fusing together of many different talents and training and expertise. But I have heard some reports that they categorize conservative Christians, Bible-believing Christians, are categorized many times as terrorists. That's completely unacceptable. That's Nazi-esque. That's completely unacceptable. So anyway, terror watch lists, facial recognition, snitch tip lines, biometric scanners, pre-crime databases, data mining, pre-cognitive technology, drones, contact tracing apps, license plate readers, social media vetting, surveillance towers. What these add up to is a world in which, on any given day, the average person is now monitored, surveyed, spied on, and tracked in more than 20 different ways by both government and corporate eyes and ears. Okay, so no matter who you are, left, right, liberal, conservative, whatever, environmentalist, whatever you are, where you are in the spectrum of political, social, and religious beliefs. The fact of the matter is, you, if you're an American citizen, I'm assuming a tax-paying, law-abiding American citizen, every second of the day, the American people are spied on by a vast network of digital peeping toms, electronic eavesdroppers, and robotic snoops. Big tech witted to big government has become Big Brother. So every second of the day, a second just went by. During that second, which we've passed, the American people, that's me and you, are being spied on by a vast network of digital peeping toms, electronic eavesdroppers, and robotic snoops. So where's our freedom of privacy? Or freedom of unreasonable search and seizure? See, it'd be one thing if they were going after people that were guilty for something. You could pick your nose wrong and you'd be on their list. The creepy new era of government/corporate spying in which we're being listened to, watched, tracked, followed, mapped, bought, sold, and targeted has been made possible by a global army of techno-tyrants, fusion centers, and peeping toms. Consider just a small sampling of the tools used to track our movements, monitor our spending, and sniff all the ways in which thoughts, actions, and social circles might land us on the government's naughty list, whether or not you've done anything wrong. Tracking you based on your phone and movements. So your cell phones are snitches. Your cell phone is beaming up to the satellites all kind of snitchy stuff about you. You didn't even do anything wrong. And they offer up a steady stream of digital location data. So, like you got the GPS in your cell phone. So everywhere you go, everywhere you drive, every single day, a computer is analyzing and storing up information about your commute and your daily travels. The FBI was able to use geofence data to identify more than 5,000 mobile devices and their owners in 4 acres around the Capitol on January 6th. So they knew everybody who was there. They knew the name and the cell phone number and the code for the cell phone number for over 5,000 people. I mean, they could sit there in front of a computer and know who was there, tracking you based on your DNA. DNA technology in the hands of government officials completes our transition to a surveillance state. If you have the misfortune to leave your DNA traces anywhere a crime has been committed, whoa, you've already got a file somewhere in some state or federal database, albeit it may be a file without a name. By accessing your DNA, the government will soon know everything else about you that you don't already know. Your family chart, your ancestry, and what you look like, your health history, your inclination to follow orders or chart your own course. After all, a DNA print reveals everything about who you are, where we come from, and who we will be. It can also be used to predict the course, etc. After all, DNA print reveals everything about all different areas of your life and past. It can also be used to predict the physical appearance of potential suspects. It's only a matter of time before the police state's pursuit of criminals into genetic profiling and a preemptive hunt for criminals in the future. Tracking you based on your face. So you have facial recognition software. From satellite to Earth, from anywhere, anybody with a cell phone or an inconspicuous device can walk around in a crowd and, just like those detective and police TV shows, a box will go around the individual they're targeting to look for more info, tracking you based on your behavior. Rapid advances in behavioral surveillance are not only making it possible for individuals to be monitored and tracked based on their patterns of movement, how you walk, facial expressions, tracking you based on your spending and consumer activities, tracking you based on your public activities, online surveillance, large public events, social unrest, gang communications, tracking you based on your social media activities. Every move you make, especially on social media, is monitored, mined for data, crunched, and tabulated. The intelligence agencies use algorithms, tracking you based on your social network, tracking you based on your car, tracking you based on your mail. So you're basically tracked everywhere. Now, that would be fine if you were guilty of something, or they thought you did a criminal act. That would be fine. That would be fine if you were a criminal. It would be fine if you were in actuality a terrorist. It would be fine. It would be fine if you were evil. But if you're a law-abiding, patriotic U.S. citizen that is doing everything that they know how to do, that's law-abiding and patriotic, et cetera, you should not be the target of the surveillance state. Plain and simple. So, what is evil about this is the surveillance state is holding hands secretly with the World Economic Forum. It's holding hands secretly with global government and the globalist elite and the Great Reset and the United Nations and WHO and everything else. This is the very thing the Bible warned about when it talked to us in the book of Revelation about the beast state, the rise of the beast state and the Antichrist. And the time will come eventually, and it's coming, by the way, much, much faster than you think. The time is coming eventually where you will be forced to receive, if you haven't received it already, a nanochip implant that functions as a broadcaster and receiver of all your activity. And you won't be able to buy or sell unless you have this nanochip implant known as the mark of the beast 666 placed in you. Then this is the beginning of the tribulation period that Christ warned about. It's the beginning of a mass surveillance state, and along with that goes a one world religion, a one world economic system, and a one world government. So, am I telling you that we can change Bible prophecy? Absolutely not. But what I'm telling you, what we can do is we can fight in a law-abiding, spiritual, peaceful manner. We can fight the good fight of faith and not just surrender. We're here for a reason. And unless we're here faithful to the reason that God put us here, then we're not completing this assignment that God has given us. God bless you. This is Paul McGUIRE. Visit paulmcguire.us.